SSDI, and a $1,400 fourth stimulus check for Social Security disability. I have all the details and exactly what you need to know, as well as answers to your questions right here in the video. Let's get into it and discuss what's going on. First off, can I ask a huge favor of you? Please, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like the video with the big thumbs up button right down below. Thank you so much, really appreciate that. Also, if you're new here or if you haven't done so, please make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Again, with the big subscribe button right down below the video, 100% free to do so, always has been and always will be, and I'll be right here for you, right by your side every single day, as I have been for many years now. Thank you so much for your support, really appreciate it, and let's get into it and talk about it. All right, so those of you that are SSDI, Social Security Disability beneficiaries, this video is dedicated to you because I see this question down below in the comments section often enough where many of you who receive SSDI reach out and say, hey, can you give us a dedicated video on a $1,400 fourth stimulus check for SSDI? So for those of you that have been asking, here you go. Here is your dedicated video. However, to be 100% fair, everything that I'm talking about here in this video actually does pertain to all fixed income beneficiaries, the whole list of beneficiaries that I talk about very often here on the channel with all kinds of benefits administered by Social Security. You know the whole list: retirement, SSDI, survivors, SSI, VA, spousal benefits. Again, the list goes on and on. So again, thanks for being here. Just want to throw that out there really quickly, but let's get into it and talk about it. All right, so I see questions about stimulus checks literally every single day down below in the comment section. When I host live streams, I see it in the chat box there as well. I mean, it's inevitable. Every single day, I see at least a handful of these comments coming in asking, when are we going to get it? How much is it going to be? Who's going to be included? When's it going to be deposited? Am I going to get it? You know, what's the dollar amount? I mean, the questions are all over the board, things like this. When are we going to get it? When is it finally going to arrive? These are probably the most common types of questions, right? When are they finally going to do something for us? But again, want to come back here really quickly and clarify exactly what's going on here, okay? Now, let me preface it really quickly by saying this much. I've said this very clearly before in other videos. I've always been very, very transparent about this, but just let me throw it out there right now to start this out. As of right now, no, a stimulus check in any dollar amount has not been approved right now, okay? I always make that very clear. However, there's nothing wrong with talking about the details of what would predicate the distribution of additional stimulus and who would actually be included by this. All right, now let me point this out really quickly, okay? There's a lot of misconceptions out there that stimulus checks come from, lawmakers when we ask for them, when we beg for them, when we tell them how much we're struggling, things like that. I'm going to say this much. That has nothing to do with it, okay? They couldn't care less. I know that sounds harsh, but it's kind of the truth. They don't really care. They act like it. They say things like, oh, we care about the people. Okay, well, I think all of us know this much by now. Watch what somebody does, not what they say, right? Watch the actions, not necessarily the words. Anybody can say anything, right? But watch their actions. If their actions are completely opposite of what they're doing, that tells us really what's going on here, okay? The actions out of lawmakers is nothing in the form of a stimulus check as of now, but yet they say, oh yeah, we want to help them, we want to do all these things. Then why aren't they doing anything? If that's really what they wanted, then they would have done something by now, right? They've done nothing. They've done nothing, absolutely nothing. So their actions certainly speak louder than words in this situation. And again, we all know this, right? It's a basic principle. We've all learned it years and years and years ago. Somebody's actions speaks way louder than their words. So that's what we got to watch. But anyway, my point is, yes, they do act like it and they pretend like they care, but that's actually not what predicates the distribution of stimulus checks. But rather what does is the economy, okay? I know this sounds weird. You probably heard me talk about this before in other videos, but it's the health of the overall economy. When the economy is contracting, when we're falling into a recession, things like that, that is when stimulus is provided, because they provide stimulus in a variety of ways. We usually just recognize it in the form of stimulus checks, but usually stimulus is provided in a lot of different ways for a lot of different industries, and we just happen to be one of the beneficiaries of one of those forms of stimulus, and it happens to be in the form of a stimulus check. Does that kind of make sense, right? So when we actually see the economy dropping off into a deep, dark recession, there's usually hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of stimulus that's provided, and usually a small percentage of that, like a very small percentage of the total money that's allocated and approved, is actually sent out in the form of stimulus checks, okay? Let me give you really quickly a quick perspective on this, okay? Just really, really fast perspective on this. Think back to early 2020, okay? So it was like March of 2020. lawmakers, when everything was closing down, lawmakers passed a $2.3 trillion package at that time, okay? Just take this into consideration because I'm giving this as perspective. They passed $2.3 trillion in a package, a stimulus package called the CARES Act. Within it contained a $1,200 stimulus check for about 85% of the population. Okay, well, if we run the math on that, a $1,200 stimulus check for about 85% of the population, let's just call it 300 million people. I mean, it's not quite the real number, but let's just, for easy math purposes, call it 300 million people that got a $1,200 stimulus check. That is $360 billion. Okay, but didn't I just say $2.3 trillion? You're right, I did. So if we run the math on this, $2.3 trillion in the total package form, and they spent $360 billion of it on stimulus checks. My big question is, what happened to the other $1.994, I'm trying to run the math here as I talk, $1.994 trillion, or no, sorry, I think I'm off a little bit, $1.94 trillion of money that was in that stimulus package. Do you see my point here? Okay. The stimulus checks in that example made up a very, 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 very teeny tiny percentage of that overall $2.3 trillion CARES Act. Okay. You see my point here? So I hope that proves a really good point right there, is that they make up like a very small percentage of the total stimulus that's provided. Okay. All right. So anyway, long story short here. Let me just give it to you straight here. What is going to predicate the distribution of a stimulus check? It's going to be the economy, okay? It's when the economy drops off into a big recession, that is when we'll see it. Now, you might be thinking, we're never going into a recession. I promise you, we will go into another recession in this country, and it's going to be an ugly one. Here's the thing. Recessions come and go. They're good. It's not a bad thing. We don't want to avoid a recession in this country. We want a recession from time to time, every 5, 7, 10 years, something like that. We want a recession. It's a good thing. It's healthy. It's not bad whatsoever. A recession is good. It's welcome. It's part of the overall economic cycle. It's part of the overall business cycle. It's part of the overall market cycle. It's not a bad thing whatsoever. It's a good reset, starts things over. It's not bad whatsoever. So we want that to happen, and we will definitely see many, many, many more recessions in the history of this country going forward. Not a bad thing. We've seen many of them. If you look back in history, a lot of recessions here in the United States. Not bad whatsoever. Now, let's answer the big question. Who would be included? Who would be included for this big thing? Okay, well, good question. Usually it is income-based. I shouldn't say usually, it's always income-based. They say if your income is below a certain threshold, usually it's like, well, the last couple times anyway, it was about $75,000 to $100,000 as an individual, or about $150,000 to $200,000 as a married couple. So usually they say if your income is below a certain threshold, whatever it happens to be, it could be 80 grand, 75, 100,000, whatever it is for an individual, and then doubled that for a married couple. If your income is below the threshold, then you get a stimulus check. That's literally what it is. Now remember, stimulus checks are an advance on a refundable tax credit that would show up otherwise on your tax return. Huh? What does that mean? Yeah, I know. It's confusing, right? So let me take like 1 minute and explain this. Okay, so on your tax return, whether you file a tax return or not, let's just say this much. On your tax return, there's a bunch of different things, a lot of different things. Sometimes there are tax credits. There's two types of tax credits, refundable and non-refundable. A refundable means even if your income is brought down to zero, you still get money back, okay? If it's a non-refundable, that means if your income is brought down to zero, sorry, you don't get anything back. Well, a stimulus check is usually just an advance meaning paid prior to a tax return being filed. It's an advance on a refundable tax credit. In other words, if your income is zero, we're going to advance you the cash that would otherwise show up as a result of a credit on your tax return that would show up as a tax refund. Make sense? So that's exactly what stimulus checks are, okay? So then if you get an advance on that payment and your income is still zero, then you're kind of good. Is that going to make sense? So it's just basically they're prepaying you of a tax credit that you would be getting on your return, but yet they're giving it out early. They're advancing the cash so that you can get it out there and spend it quickly into the economy, and it stimulates the economy. It's literally how it works every single time. Make sense? So anyway, for those of you that receive SSDI and wondering about the details of this, like, hey, okay, I'm still confused. Would we be included? It totally depends. I know that's like the worst answer in the world. It depends. I know you want a definitive yes or no, but it really does depend. But here's the thing. The simple answer would be most likely yes. But there's always a but, right? I mean, here's the thing. It's always going to be predicated on the parameters that lawmakers wrap around the legislation that's going to encompass stimulus. Is that going to make sense, right? So again, there's no reason that you wouldn't be included. I can't sit here and say like, yes, 100% guaranteed you're going to be included. I don't know that. I have no idea. I don't know what they're going to do. That's why I'm saying that. I can't say that for sure, but there's no reason that you would not be included. There's always parameters around it saying, well, if your income is below this threshold, you get it unless, X, Y, or Z is your situation, then you might be excluded. Does that kind of make sense? So anyway, I hope this helps you to understand the situation better. The simple answer is this much. When there's another stimulus, I'm not going to say if, when. It's only a matter of when. When there is another stimulus at some point, when we enter into a big recession and the economy is going down, things like that, when there is another stimulus, the likelihood of fixed income beneficiaries getting it is very, 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 very high. Okay? It always is. Why? Because that's just what they do. Your income by default as a fixed income beneficiary is below the threshold that makes you eligible. Does that make sense? Right? So anyway, I hope that helps to better understand the situation. I know it's confusing. I know fixed income needs more money. I know you need a stimulus. I get it. I understand just as much as you. Unfortunately, I'm not a lawmaker. I don't have any influence on them. I wish I did, but I don't. But I'm just a spectator. I'm here like you, doing research, wondering when something's going to arrive. Does that help you a little bit? Either way, I will continue to be here for you, right by your side every single day. I will continue to watch the details. I will keep you posted. I will point out anything out there you can possibly grab or take advantage of. I will do whatever I possibly can to help you through this right now. I know it's rough out there. I've got your back in any way that I can to advocate on your behalf and to do anything I possibly can for you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you watching. Please subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet. Totally free to do so. Hit the like button down below. Big thumbs up button. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Otherwise, check out the other videos here on the channel. The thousands in the video library. Well over 5,000 there. The ones I've hand selected for you down below in the description or the top of the comment section. Some popular videos there. Otherwise, right now showing up on your screen as well. You'll see some videos. Thank you so much. Check out one of those, and I'll see you again soon in the next